Hi, I'm Amadour, and this is my exhibition, Nevada Proscenium, at Truckee Meadows Community College in the main gallery. And I'm here with Dana, and thank you so much for having me today. And I am super happy to share with you about this exhibition. Why don't we take a look? So as you can see, these are large-scale paintings. This one is 6 feet high by 5 feet across. This has about 50 layers of paint on it, so it goes through a significant process. To kind of start you off and reel you in to understanding how that process takes place, what I'll start with is actually the stretcher bars. So I think that you might know what stretcher bars are, but they're the wood parts behind the canvas. Some of them can be aluminum too. And in this case, it's wood. And so what I did is I actually built these in my studio, kind of through putting different pieces of wood together and then, nailing them and with screws. And then what you do on top is stretch a canvas. So this type of canvas is pretty big. So what you do if you're gonna, start with a giant canvas is you actually go from a giant roll. So I have like these huge rolls that I use. Maybe you've seen them like in a Helen Frankenthaler or Richard Diebenkorn studio, and you kind of spread it out. And so then what you do is you staple it in. And so that's kind of how you get it really nice and smooth. After that, what I did is I actually took the canvas and I put it onto the floor. And what I did was measure out exactly kind of what I wanted. So I usually take like kind of a big ruler, and with that ruler, I take a graphite pencil and I start drawing out the lines. And I love to make things, as straight as possible, but, we're humans, so I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking more for the feeling of what I'm looking to emote through the painting and the process. So I'll take a piece of graphite, use different rulers. This is not the first one. I'll show you the first one in a second, and you'll see that I have a number on it because I was trying to, find out like what is the number, how big do I want it, and they're all different in the end. So I kind of put the lines and I was playing around with shapes, and what I knew is that I kind of wanted like a portal. And in my previous series, California Incline, which is about the California Incline Bridge in Santa Monica, I have these arches I play with. And through the arches, they become portals to the ocean. This becomes a portal to the desert. And that's where we come to Nevada. So actually, the first thing I did out of everything was I taped off this middle section. And then what I did was I taped off this section. So I kind of like to work on the border first, just because it's the most labor intensive. This has the most layers, as you can probably see. What I do, if you get close, you can see all these different graphite marks. Each one of these marks is layered through different pieces, and it also involves layering with medium. Medium is kind of like, there's all sorts of different mediums, but in hindsight, it's like clear paint. So it's kind of like the stuff that goes before the pigment kind of gets with it. And so basically I used a soft gel gloss medium, which I love because soft gel gloss is really light. Then you have medium gloss, you have high gloss, more shiny, and then you have thicker. So some of them are thick and some of them are not. This one is like soft. And so basically I'd put graphite, then I put gloss, and then I would take a really, really wet acrylic paint. So I used a black acrylic paint, really, really just subtle pigmentation. I put it into kind of like a glass of water. I kind of swirl it around with the paint, and then I put it to kind of create this layering effect. And then it starts to kind of build on each other. So you can kind of see there's like a density to the graphite lines. In this case right here, the graphite disappears. It's actually not disappearing, it's just layered on top with other pieces of paint, medium. And then what I did is that I taped off more, and I took kind of these pieces of tape off. So this was kind of raw, like the middle. And then I took another piece of acrylic and I kind of got this black acrylic and I just swapped it right across. because I kind of wanted the agility of something fast. I wanted I think of this as like a musical notation because I'm also a musician. And so I kind of I was like, this is like a fast moment in the piece, right? It has a velocity to it. It has a swiftness, and you can kind of see the, quickness. And I like that. And so I did these moments, that are kind of more even staccato, you could say. They're kind of bright. And then they're kind of, infiltrated by this subtlety. It kind of gets washed. It's more pleasant. And then after that, I taped off here where you can see these iridescents. I use this paint called iridescent flash paint. Flash is an acrylic brand, but we call it Flash as artists. And I took it and I kind of just made sure that it was layered enough. Usually, like on other paintings, I try to make it really thick and hard edge. Hard edge means that it's kind of really taped off and has a very clean edge. And so I was thinking about hard edge painting, and I was like, I want this to be bold, but I don't want it to be so bold where you can't see what's underneath it. So I kind of did not do that many strokes on top of it. Instead, I just did like one go, which created kind of this, I don't know how to call this, but maybe like, what would you call this? It's kind of like you can see through it a little bit. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It changes in opacity. Yeah, thank you. And so this right here is I taped off again. As you can see, it might look, I don't know, to you on the camera, like white. It's not. This is actually a pastel ground paint medium. This pastel ground is actually used to put on top of paint on a canvas to be able to take graphite or pastel and draw on it. So if you got like a whole canvas and you painted on it and then you took pastel ground on it and you put tape, or I don't know, you even just did it with a brush, you could actually draw on this surface. So I could have taken like a graphite. I have before, but I kind of just like to leave it. And what I do is I like to leave it because if you're moving around the canvas, especially if you have natural light, right now we have gallery light, this disappears. So it literally disappears into the surface. And there's something cool about playing with light, shadow, and you can see it kind of, again, changes from darker. You can see the graphite more when it gets more black here, or when it gets more gray, it changes. And so you can kind of see where I taped off, where I kept some of the tape that you could see more visible. I took some shapes like this square here, and then this square is just raw canvas. And I kind of like to mimic some shapes to kind of, create a play between them where they're playful, they're almost charismatic to me.
So did you do the entire piece with what ended up being the background and then putting the middle over? Or was there an empty spot in the middle?
Okay, so let me get to that. So again, I taped off right here.
You got me so curious. Yeah. This is so fun.
So I taped off right here where you can see that it's like clearly very clean to some extent. I left that on for a little while. Then if you remember earlier, I taped off this middle part, right?
Okay.
So what I did here is then I took the canvas again and I put it on the ground, right? And okay, between this time, I'm taking the canvas, putting on the wall, taking off, putting on, I'm always moving it. So this thing is kind of being like, just like moved. And here, I like to do this kind of wash technique where I literally will take a little bit of paint, right, and apply it on the surface, and then I take water and literally dump the water and paint with the water. So this is painted with water, and so this kind of seeps through. If you were on the other side of this right now, you'd see that it seeps through in this area, whereas this does not.
Like watercolors.
Exactly. And so it's really kind of wet when you apply it on, and it almost looks like a lake bed, like a shiny lake after rain. And then once it dries, it creates kind of this super beautiful atmospheric kind of tonality to it. And here I left it just raw because initially when I was kind of going through it, I was thinking, do I want to, make it more like a desert? Do I want to make it more like do I want to make it more like painted? And what I ended up deciding was that it should be just beautiful and just its own thing. Why obstruct it with paint when it could just be itself? It already reads desert to me, and it already reads atmospheric. And when you pull back, it makes you want to go inwards, and it's just the brightest thing on the entire painting. So anyways, after this part kind of cleans up, I tape it off again. Here, up in this, I think this is a trapezoid, right? Like an upside down trapezoid. And so this underneath, believe it or not, is a super bright ultramarine mixed with a cobalt. So it's like, if you know those colors, it's very, very, very pigmented. So what I did, I don't know if you can see, maybe like here, but it's so subtle on this, you wouldn't know. So I put like a thick amount of like opaque, mixed cobalt and ultramarine. Then what I did was I waited for that to dry, and then I taped off this part over here, and I painted this underneath with an iridescent gold flash paint. So I always paint underneath the gold leaf. Some people paint red because they want more of like a historical kind of flavor to it, where it's like almost looking at like an Italian kind of painting or something you'd find in Venice, Ravenna. And so within mosaics, then I came back to this and I mixed a gray, like a kind of beautiful blue gray, and I applied it all over on the top. So, so this is like a really beautiful bright blue and then has all this gray. So the underpainting is just as important as the, I guess, overpainting, I guess you would call it. And so it creates kind of this block. Then what I did is I took off this tape here, came back to this, and what I did is I started gold leafing. So the process of gold leafing, you may be familiar with it, may not, I'll go through it briefly, is that you apply first this gold leafing glue. So it's, I forgot the name of it, but it's like it has a specific name. And you kind of just apply it over, you wait like an hour, it becomes sticky, kind of like honey, if it like, something like that. And then you come back and what you do is then you start applying your leaf. So this is like a really nice leaf. It's called Manetti leaf that I get from Italy. So it's real gold. And so what you do is you take it off of these little slivers and then you apply it. What I did here is I took the leaf and I actually just kind of made it like random. So I would break the leaf and then apply it in different places to create this kind of runoff texture. I wanted it to be almost like you're entering it, or like it's crumbled, it's extracted. Then after I finish this, I wait for this to dry. I come to these. So I think I started on this, but what I do is on this, I first put a whole medium. So remember we did medium here, so I put a medium on it. What the medium does is it makes it kind of, I guess, calcify, you could say, and it makes the canvas kind of rigid. It's no longer like soft. And then I applied kind of this ochre color. I mixed ochre, like an actual ochre with white, and like a titanium white, and I put it there. And then I kind of like that you could see the graphite, because I'm always looking at Richard Diebenkorn's work. I'm looking at Agnes Martin. I like that they leave their graphite marks. To me, it's important to kind of not just cover the surface, but be able to make it legible to the viewer. And so I then put the the ochre on top. Here, this was actually a mistake initially. So I put a medium and I had the intention that I was gonna paint it. But I was FaceTiming my friend from Istanbul who lives in Berlin, which is super cool. He's awesome. And we were talking and I was just like, you know what? Like, this is what my painting is looking like. And he was like, that looks like marble. Is that marble? Did you put an actual piece of marble on the canvas? And I was like, no, I didn't. And so I kind of like the idea that it resembled stone, but it's just medium on it. And as you can see, it's clear, but it's obviously wet on the canvas. So after that, I came back to this. This here, I mixed this brown. So I think I used like a burnt sienna here, and I mixed it with like just like a regular brown, and then like a little bit of white, like a tiny, tiny bit. And so then here I taped it off, and I just kind of wanted it to be simple. And so I put the medium down, and then I took a brush and I just kind of quickly did it. I was thinking about kind of like how Laura Owens works, where she kind of makes these kind of tree facades. And I was just like, okay, like I want it to just feel like washy quick, and I want it to resemble wood, where you would look at it and be like, oh, that reads as wood. And then here I actually made it opaque. So I took the same brown and I applied it into the taped off part of the canvas, right? And I applied a thick paint, almost like this top one. Then I took the gray of this one that I applied over the cobalt ultramarine, and I used it to create this effect that again mimics wood. So this is the same gray here as here. This is the same brown as here. Okay. So I kind of like that it's interchangeable, but it kind of creates this connectedness throughout the canvas, connectedness throughout the painting. And yeah, I mean, you just wait for it to dry, and that's kind of how the Nevada proscenium paintings were made.
So how long does the process take? Sounds like
it takes a while.
Weeks.
It depends, but yeah, it can take a while because you have to, one, wait for things to dry, but then, I think the toughest part is actually making decisions. Like, I'm like, oh, how did I decide to do this? I have no idea. I really have no idea. It just is intuitive.
It happens.
And I was just like playing, I love to use stencils for these. You might recognize them. People are like, wait, are those stencils? I'm like, yes. I use all sorts of different stencils and I collect them. And it's just fun, you just have fun with it. And then it creates, a narrative. And so why don't we go to another one?
Okay.
And I'll share with you kind of what the prosceniums mean. So as you can see here, this has 6 inches here. This is like 6 inches wide, and some of them are like 14. And I can't remember how long this is, to be honest. But these kind of moments here, some people ask me, like, why is there a number there? It's because I was measuring. I was literally measuring. And if you can see kind of through here, how there's all these raw lines, all these graphite lines, this is because I honestly was just playing around with, is this how big I want it? Is this how small? I had no idea. And you can even see here, I put a line at some point and then I erased it. And I kind of like that you can see the memory of it, but it's not initially there if you're not looking for it. And so, and then,
it's more than the end result. It ends up being a example of the process, even though you don't know the process. We do now because of you, but you don't know, but you see those elements come through, the working lines.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, and if you can see here, it's kind of like yellowish. You're probably like, what the heck is that? This is actually because I missed one thing. When you put down a piece of tape, how you get that perfect line is you take clear medium and you paint it on. So you take the clear medium and then it makes sure that none of the paint seeps through. Okay. That is the secret. And so this is why there's this, but I don't know. I just kind of liked how it looked, and it kind of gave it more of this, I guess you could say portal vibe to it, or like a, I forgot that like filter you can use on photos that you kind of create, like where the black comes in.
They might come to me.
I know. You guys know. You guys may know. Anyways. But yeah, so let's go into Nevada proscenium as a concept.
Okay.
So this, and the way I start is I'm not thinking like, oh, how am I going to make this? I'm thinking, I come from a conceptual school of thought where it's like, what am I making and why? And what is the idea behind it? And that usually is the predecessor to the actual work for me. But I was thinking a lot about Nevada, and I was like, okay, I'm having my first show in Nevada. I want to do something Nevada themed. I don't want to bring the California incline here because, Nevada doesn't really like California. And also being from Nevada, I was like, well, I should do something here, because this is my home. But I love California, by the way. But I wanted to do something very Nevada, very Western, very American West. And I was thinking, what is something that is important that is not really being as discussed in my home? and I was thinking about the history, right? Because in Reno, we kind of grew up with history of the Comstock Lode, which was the largest silver ore mining deposit in American history, here in Virginia City, Nevada. And I was also thinking about the mining history, about extraction, because Nevada is corresponding with mines. And actually the reason I started using silver and gold initially was thinking about, silver state, golden state. Mm-hmm. That was my idea, and also about the changing light throughout the day. So thinking about, okay, a silver is more of a cool light, a gold is more of like it's coming in type of light. And so in this series, I was thinking about Nevada, I was thinking about extraction, I was thinking about mining. And then I had a meeting with some of the students at UNR. I was kind of just randomly talking to the Latinx student group that they have there, and they had this exhibition on the Maldonado brothers and the Mexican mine. So the history of Virginia City is that the Latinx community is kind of not known, basically. Especially growing up in Nevada, you learn that it's Irish miners, mm-hmm. German miners, people coming from the East Coast out to the West Coast, from all over the world, really. And then you also learn a tidbit that there's Chinese immigrants who came, Chinese Americans, also, of course, Asian American community. A lot of them built the railroads, they worked in the mines. But the Latinx community, you don't really know about. It's kind of hidden. And I personally had no idea about it either, as informed as I thought I was. And so I started digging more into the Maldonado brothers initially, which had the biggest mine at the time before Mackey, which was a big kind of mining king, they called mm-hmm. them, like a silver king, I think. And so basically they ran kind of the economy.
They did. And, they made a huge, and this is where San Francisco came from.
Exactly.
The money from Virginia City.
Exactly. So Virginia City, is a small town today, but at the time it was 25,000 people, which is, still not mm-hmm. big, but at the time it was bigger than Los Angeles.
Not big by today's standards, but
at the time.
But for a town that is up in the hills and hard to get to,
exactly.
It's huge.
Exactly. And so anyways, Lake Tahoe, Alpine Lake up by Reno. And I say this because you might be from Reno, so bear with me, but some people are not. And people think that Reno's next to Lake Tahoe, next to Las Vegas. We're 7.5 hours from Vegas, 3 hours from San Francisco, relatively. And Lake Tahoe is like a half hour from my house in South Reno. Anyways, it's up perched in the mountains, but it was just this beautiful place where the Washoe people, which are one of our local tribes, were the stewards. And they still are the stewards, of course, but it was a sacred place for them. So when this mining came in, basically what happened is it deforested the entire area. It decimated all of the old growth forests. And there was this huge timber industry that kind of rose up. There was the Incline Village flume, mm-hmm. which a flume takes big pieces of timber up kind of water. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of creates all these different places to kind of float the timber. And
that had to be so cool to see back in the day.
It's cool, but also very sad, right? Because it deforested. Yeah. But it's also kind of cool because there's also water rides and stuff themed after it. I don't know, that's what I think about. But anyways, the Latinx community is very important. So Nevada is ancient lands. This is ancient indigenous lands, right? We have the Northern Paiute, we have the Washoe, we have the Western Shoshone, we have the Southern Shoshone, we have all sorts of tribes, right? And all of these tribes have existed here for thousands of years. And this is something I'm always contemplating because I love deep time. I love geology. I like thinking that in the Triassic era, the entire state of Nevada was covered by an ocean, a mm-hmm. sea, ancient Lahontan. And so anyways, thinking about all these ideas, I was thinking about, again, Virginia City, Latinx community, all of these things. So at one point, this was also Mexico. This was Mexican territory. before the Mexican-American War, which changed everything, with San Antonio, and we have the Alamo, significant battles, which changed, North American history, you could say. So Nevada then became America, and there was already a Latinx population here. And so that population actually was significant to the mining endeavors in Virginia City. Of course, we have the Maldonado, but there's even portions of these kind of mining histories that are not as known that UNR has had to uncover, the University of Nevada, Reno. And so they even know that they had like small shops, that they had certain places, that there were routines, that there were grocery stores. And so I was thinking about this history. Then I was thinking about today. So, in today's cultural kind of milieu, you could say, within the art world, within art in Nevada, the Latinx community is really kind of not known still. I mean, in Reno especially, most of the significant artists I grew up with all did landscape or land art. So of course, I think it's beautiful. I think it's still relevant, but they draw a tree or create a desert scape or think about these places, right? But they weren't really considering, at least as much as I would want, the communities that didn't really get to experience this, that were working all the time, that were creating the infrastructure to be able to have these leisure experiences of creating a plein air painting in the middle of some desert. And so for me, I was thinking, I'm a first generation American. My family's from Mexico and Colombia. And I was like, I kind of want to rep my community, my family, my people, right? And also just thinking about that this was also part of everyone's history. It's not just mine, but it's part of the greater body of history. And so thinking about, all the people that are in the Latinx community today, it's also that they are underrepresented, but I would like for my community to see themselves in these paintings, see themselves in geometric abstraction. And although it's a little bit kind of strange at certain times, because you're like, how could I see myself? There's no figure. That's kind of the whole point, is to kind of be able to...
There's a place right there.
Yeah, to be able to just be with something that is kind of open for you. There's interior, exterior. This is like the scaffolding, right? So another super, super important aspect, if you can see with all these works, is that they are all kind of in this square, rectangle form. There's all of these different elements to them that kind of become three-dimensional, almost a trompe l'oeil effect. And that is because I was thinking about the timber mining structures. And so there were specific timber mining structures that were created in Virginia City. And so I was thinking about all of these structures that still exist underground, right? And thinking about all of the labor that went into them. And so I kind of took this timber looking, square. It was almost cubic. It was three-dimensional. And applied it to this, to think about the narrative of the workforce, of the labor, and also of the structure. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like that kind of sums up the paintings.
Cool. Now, do we want to take a look at your area over here, where it started? So I really love how you went places, and you got the energy from the places, and that's what you see in those pieces of work.
Yeah, so over here, this is what I call the cartographic archive. So a cartography is map making, it's the study of map making, and as an archive, an archive is like gathering, certain things to create a body of work that has, historic importance. And so for me, I was thinking like, I really wanted the viewer, whoever comes in here, to be like, oh, maybe I can visually map how you got to that point. I just explained it to you, right? But at the same time, if you look at these images, it's just, places in my life. Up here, we start with Virginia City. This is C Street, and it's just the main kind of drag. This is Coit Tower in San Francisco. This is a sagebrush on my dog walk. This is Dallas, downtown Dallas. This is a Frank Lloyd Wright Auditorium in San Rafael, California. This is a window looking through a wall at Salvador Dali's house in Cadaqués in Spain. This is Lake Tahoe from an aerial view. This is an ancient Roman aqueduct in Istanbul. This is a painting in Madrid at El Prado. This is the Metropolitan Opera House, you know, the light fixtures they have.
And this is your Jeep with your ducks?
This is actually my cousin Viviana's Jeep. And so she collects all the ducks because, you know, Jeep people kind of have this whole duck exchange thing. Yeah. And so, you know, they're just all across.
Is this a Dazzolale?
Yes, it's a Louisa Kaiser Dazzolale basket at the Nevada State Museum, which I adore. And you can even see the process here. If you look closely, you can see, you know, the process of the Nevada prosceniums being made, of, you know, the timber mining structures right there. There is the
I know exactly where
model.
that's at.
Nevada State Museum also. You know, here you have an Agnes Martin, kind of how she was exploring these different squares. And so I was just, you know, thinking about all the different places that we go to, you know, throughout our experiences and how they lead up to certain moments. For me, it's these paintings, you know, for you, it could be also a painting, maybe a sculpture, maybe just, you know, the moment you have right now, like the present moment. And so, yeah, I mean, these are all across the board.
And they are fascinating.
Yeah, here's like Victoria, you know, the like the main building they have, I think it's the Capitol building of British Columbia. And
there's Dazzolale right there.
At the Legends Mall. You know, I think the Legends Mall is the coolest mall because they have all this Nevada history there. They have like an ichthyosaur, they have a bluebird. Right?
Way cool. And if you go into the store, they've got actual dead presidents sitting there talking to you.
Yes, they do. At the
and who doesn't love dead presidents?
This is in Rome. There's this building, I can't remember, but it's from like Mussolini's time. Wow. And it's kind of like this fascist architecture, but it led to kind of being replicated all over the world. You know, here's my California inclines.
It's kind of brutalist architecture.
Yes.
Maybe brutalist has a little bit of history back in historic times.
Of course.
I should look that up.
Yeah, and so, you know, there's tons of Nevada here, but there's also intermixed just places I've been through.
So you're going to have this show in the Nevada Museum of Art for a year.
No, Nevada State Museum.
Nevada State Museum.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Nevada State Museum. And is this going to be there too?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. I can share more about that later, but it's called the Mapes Suite. And it's pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah,
it's about the Mapes Hotels. So Nevada Proscenium is a series.
Shows.
Yes. Nevada Proscenium is a series that I will continue to make for the rest of my life. So I really, again, look up to Richard Diebenkorn, to, you know, so many artists that, you know, this is actually Ana Mercedes Hoyos right here. She's a Colombian artist that works in geometric abstraction, but then she actually made her whole career basically from these fruit baskets, like these still lifes she made. But I like to make work forever, you know, of something that I'm constantly exploring. And that we call a practice. That's an artistic practice. It's literally like practicing a sport, you know, or something. But it's creating kind of a body of work that becomes something you explore further. And I'm not really a photographer. I wouldn't call myself a photographer. I would call myself somebody who is constantly historicizing and looking into research into art history for different avenues of contemplation.
But you are an artist, and that comes through even when you're just taking snapshots.
Yeah,
because they're not snapshots anymore. They're
these
you take some time.
These are like my own. These are like my own.
Exact right. I love that building. Yeah, Where is that building?
That is actually Donald Judd's Chinati Foundation in Marfa, Texas.
Oh wow!
So Donald Judd, also a big influence on me. You know, this is Berlin, Nevada, with the ichthyosaur kind of mining structures they have there. This is downtown Reno. This is an ancient Northern Paiute, 9,200-year-old tool and dog bane plain weave mat. This is inside of the recording facility at the Pannonia Film Studios, where I just recorded with an orchestra. check out
You
Angel
do all
Eyes.
kinds of cool stuff.
You Were Watching Me. It comes out June 10th. Yeah. And single music. Oh, here you can actually see the process of, you know, that we talked about earlier with the square. And, you know, there's just all sorts of different moments here. You know, there's moments in Australia, Japan.
So how long will this
Michigan.
be at Truckee Meadows Community College?
This will be here till June 18th. So today is June 9th, so you have 9 days to come and check it out. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll get this
At
video
the
out in a day
Dandini
or
campus at the Red Mountain building, and on June 10th we have an artist talk.
Awesome.
5 p.m. So yeah,
Awesome.
tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
I may not get this out in time, but I will put it onto our social networks.
That's okay.
And,
yeah.
And get down here if you can. I'm sure I'll get this out before the show's down. You just come down here. The room is open. Check it out.
Yeah, and you have a whole tour and an explanation. So if you can't make it, my gift to you that you get like the full walkthrough.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you.